Hiding the chat. All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Jensen program. I am Brett Jensen, coming to you from the paradise that is Central Florida, and joining me from the beautiful Pacific Northwest, we have Eric Jensen as well. Uh-oh. Did I lose your audio already? Yeah, I'm not getting any.
Changed for some reason. Are we good?
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Okay. I am from the Pacific Northwest and my microphone is awful.
Well, we're excited to hang out a little bit and talk about a couple of entertaining things, which is really the point of this program, so that we can talk about entertaining things and give everyone the correct point of view regarding all things that we discuss.
Which we have.
Which we have and other people don't. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things that we were both very excited to get started with is the new Legend of Zelda game that was recently released on Nintendo Switch, Tears of the Kingdom. So I have to ask you, Eric, how far are you in Tears of the Kingdom?
Not as far as I would like, unfortunately. I have not made it past all of the beginning shrines of the first Sky Island. I'm moving my way up the cold mountain right now. So yeah, I'm still like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I'm going pretty slow, but
gotcha.
But it's been awesome so far. I'm enjoying it. So
agree. It's like just incredible. I as a computer programmer myself, I look at the abilities that they implemented, the ability to fuse different items together to construct things, and then to be able to activate these devices that let you like fly or drive or do all sorts of crazy things. And I can't help but think, aren't they just asking for people to break this game? Who authorized these ideas?
Which I don't know if you've looked, but because I'm playing slow and I don't care about spoilers, like I'm not going on spoilers on the story, but like, mechanics and that stuff, I don't care about being spoiled on that. I've looked at some of the things that people have created, and they've created like drone strikes, flying machines that just take out everything. It's incredible. I don't even know how you would think to make some of the stuff that they're doing, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, in Breath of the Wild, the previous Zelda game, it was always really impressive when someone figured out how to use magnesis to get two carts on top of each other, and then you could magnesis the bottom one and make yourself fly, sort of. And you'd go anywhere on the map if you did that, just really slow. And that always impressed me, but boy, the stuff that people are making now, you're absolutely right. Ridiculous.
I saw one video of like a progression through the stages of warfare, and it started like with a little wood cart as, to block the arrows, and then went, through tanks and then through planes, and it's I don't know how, again, I don't know what they were thinking when they were like, oh, let's create this mechanic that you can create anything wherever, and then when you have the recall build a thing, you can just create anything that you've built before, and that's incredible stuff.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see what people do when they speed run this game, because it's gonna be ridiculous. It's gonna be hilarious and ridiculous.
Oh yeah. So how far in the game are you?
I'm not super far either. I'm a little bit further than that. I've made it down to the surface. I've started exploring, similar to Breath of the Wild. it kind of branches off, and there's 4 like large objectives in various regions that give you kind of some story. And so I've started getting into one of those, realize I need some better protection against temperature and everything else.
Now, how, like, I know that that they've like created the fusing of weapons together, so your wimpy tree branches can actually become something better and stuff. But also, I've noticed already that combat is a little bit more difficult than Breath of the Wild. Is it like that where you are still?
Yeah,
like, are the guys tougher?
I've found that to be true, and I don't know how bad of it is. Just I need to get good. There's definitely some of that. Because like if I'm a little more precise with parries and with flurry rush type things, you can execute things fairly safely, but I'm not on target with those all the time. The other thing that's new about Tears of the Kingdom, which is kind of interesting, you already talked about, you start in this sky area above the main ground. There's also an underworld. Mm-hmm. And in that underworld, there's an extra layer of challenge where if you take damage from certain types of enemies, it reduces your maximum health while you're underground. There are some exceptions, but it's an additional layer of challenge that makes that really painful.
Nice. And you know, I'm not like I love video games, and I know that there's some people that go on and on about like, oh, the frames per second and that sort of stuff. And some people are saying, no, it's only 30 frames per second. Whatnot. I haven't noticed anything. It's just fun so far. That's the only thing I've noticed. And so as far as critiques on the beginning of the game, I am all for it.
Yeah.
As well as like 10 million other people that bought it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's an extremely successful game, which shouldn't be surprising. There's a lot of Zelda fans.
For good reason.
For a good reason. Just
probably one of the best series there is.
100%. 100%. I'm if you can't tell by the Master Sword right there. I'm a little bit of a fan of The Legend of Zelda. All right. Any other thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom?
Oh, no. I want to play it some more.
Yeah. That's the other thing is like when I was younger, before I had, 6 kids, I could, just play a game whenever I wanted. And now my kids are old enough that I'm having to compete with them over the console. I have to share.
Oh,
and so
see, we've got them on a strict 30-minute game time here, but I go above that when I can. It's the when I can is not like taking them to soccer, ballet, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Limits on the when you can. You're right. Adulting, it's not always fun.
No. not like when we were in college and we're gonna play till 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's true. When Zelda came out then, I certainly have distinct memories of saying, oh yeah, eating, sleeping, using the restroom, none of these things are as important as the next Legend of Zelda. And maybe a little bit embarrassed about that now, but obviously not enough to not say that on live YouTube for posterity. Yeah, phenomenal game. Okay.
Also, if anyone that is watching, I see a few people are watching, throw in any comments or questions you want us to answer, and we'll throw that. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, YouTube chat is right there, and you bet. And you don't even have to be a member or give us money. It's not like a super chat. But we'll accept money, too. You can do that.
Most definitely. Yeah, my favorite charity, me.
So, speaking of charity, Speaking of charity, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was recently the subject of a CBS 60-minute special in which a quote-unquote whistleblower claimed that he was feeling uncomfortable with the tax law and liability that the church was using and their tax-exempt status. And he thought that 60 Minutes was the best place to showcase this awful thing. Never mind that he was getting up to 30% from the IRS as a reward for trying to get these penalties put on the church.
Oh, you mean a multi-million dollar bonus for doing this?
But I'm sure his motives were totally altruistic. 100%. Absolutely ridiculous.
And I like that the thing that was coming out of this is that the church is really good at managing its money. Yeah. And that's a bad thing. I was shaking my head like, you're right. What? Why is this a bad thing?
It's not. Like, if you could imagine what the enemies of the church would do if the church were in financial trouble, they'd be all over that. They have in the past. And in fact, when then Elder Heber J. Grant was a member of the Quorum of the 12, one of his assignments in the late 1890s was to go help the church get a loan to be able to make payments on existing loans. We were in a bad spot. This isn't like, we've just always been hoarding something out in the Granite Mountain vaults in Salt Lake. This is something that we've learned through hard lessons. The same things that we teach other people to be responsible, to live within their means, and to save for a rainy day, which is said every April conference when they deliver the report. 100% of the time, they actually practice that.
Yeah.
What a brilliant thing.
And then I like the other, all the people chiming in, criticizing this, are like, well, I would use all this money to solve world hunger, or I would use it to solve whatever problem, how is every homeless person in the United States or whatnot. And I think what they're missing is that these tax exemptions for churches are not because they are charities. It's to keep the government away from the churches. It's a separation of church and state, much more of one than we use in schools and stuff. But the church itself is not a charity per se. The church has its mission of, proclaiming the gospel, redeeming the dead, perfecting the, all of these, the missions of the church. And I know they updated it recently, but that's what we're doing. Right. It's not, we're not the American Red Cross. and heaven forbid we're not a welfare system run by the government, which is racking up however many $1 trillion of debt the U.S. government has. Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous.
The opposite of living within the means.
Yeah, this I grabbed a I'll put it up on the screen here. I grabbed this screenshot of a tweet that somebody had said in response to the 60 Minutes video, and this is what they tweet: "People don't need religion. Religion needs people. They're just corporations, and they need your money to thrive. Religion doesn't make you a better person. Intelligence and kindness does. Religion doesn't feed the poor. Good people with big hearts do that. Just remember that." With the hashtag, tax the churches. And of course, that's like the theme of all of these. Like, you don't need these organized things, but tax the churches. Like, just insert government in place of religion here. And what is like how does this logic not apply to that? People don't need government. Government needs people. They're just big corporations and they need your money to thrive. In fact, it's not even a corporation. They just need your money. They don't generate wealth. They tax it. That's it. Government doesn't make you a better person. Intelligence and kindness do. Government doesn't feed the poor. Good people with big hearts do that. Just remember that. Yeah, the church does more good than the government. The government is in debt trillions and trillions of dollars. And we still, after our war on poverty that started in the LBJ days, we're nowhere closer to being free of poverty in the United States. It's
In fact, we're probably a little further away.
right. Yeah. Which is why, yeah, I tell you, I don't know if he's the first guy that said it, but there's a guy I follow on Twitter, Not Your Bishop, phenomenal account. He's a great guy. S. Wooly Kimball is the handle he goes by. But several times he said, it wouldn't matter to me if the church took my tithing money, put it in a big pile, and lit it on fire. Because that's once I've given it, that's it. The giving it is what makes me better. That's what God asks. And I think that's really important that, how is the church spending my tithing money? Well, if it's still yours, you haven't given it.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah. What can you say?
Well, yeah, we have so many people that think they would do a better job, and I just don't see. I mean, there's a reason why there's a big surplus, and hashtag make it a trillion. But
yes.
But it's because the leaders of the church actually know what they're doing.
Yeah. And how much more important is that going to be as we get more and more members of the church in areas like Africa and Southeast Asia, where they're just not capable of generating the same sort of resources for building temples and buildings and other resources. It really is vital for the church to have something stored away to be able to support the spiritual needs of people all over the world. And people in the United States say, the top 1%, but we are the 1%. If you make more than $38,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the world. And they don't like to think about it on the international scale, but it's absolutely the case. They're all national socialists.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on that?
That's all I mean, just again, and if we're trying to improve people, I would just say as a final thing, the best way to improve people, change their lives for the better, is not to give them money. I mean, you look at all the lottery winners that just go broke, in a couple months or whatnot. The best way to change people for the better is to bring them to Christ.
Yeah.
And then they themselves become better through him.
Yeah.
And that breaks any chain of poverty, abuse, whatever. You go to Christ, that's how you get better.
He is the answer. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, intelligence and kindness are the solution. If only there were some organization that encouraged learning and kindness on a regular basis. Oh, I know. The IRS does that, right? ATF, FBI, one of those, right? Absolutely ridiculous. On a different subject, then, if we can move over to the sports section of our program, There are a couple of things that we wanted to talk about. Of course, anybody who can like see the screen probably recognizes that the University of Southern California is absolutely the institution that we support in terms of sports of all types. So we're excited to see what happens with USC this season. So let's start there. What do you think? Caleb Williams coming back, Heisman Trophy winner quarterback. We've got some good stuff that happened in the transfer portal. What do you think this upcoming season is going to look like?
Obviously, like our offense is so stacked that I mean, when we have wide receivers like Bryant and just leaving because we have better guys coming in, it's we're loaded at wide receiver with Singer, with Mario Williams, with Rice, and then the incoming freshmen. So I think offensively we are completely set. I think I will be disappointed if we're not scoring over 35 points a game. In fact, I don't see how we won't score over 35 points a game. Even though like we've made, we're needing to replace some guys on the offensive line. I think some of the transfers coming in have solved those issues.
Yeah.
It's on the defensive side of things, which unlike last year, this year we've got stars coming in, in the transfer portal. So I'm actually very excited about the additions on the defense, especially in the linebacking core. We've got Cobb coming from Oklahoma State. We've got guys on the defensive line. The guy from Georgia. Mayer coming in. He's so. I just don't see how we can't be a lot better. Now, I will say the one thing is our schedule is a lot tougher this year than it was last year. But I think another year in the system and actual talented players coming in, I could see us, seriously flirting with an undefeated season. Probably there's a loss in there somewhere, but it would not surprise me if USC goes undefeated this season.
That's, of course, what we all hope for. And if you don't, you should. What's wrong with you? The thing that over the past several seasons, when Clay Helton was at the helm as coach, there were so many things, even before that, with Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin. There was this sense of, USC has a tradition of powering the football. And if we've got these exciting backs, we have Lendale White and Reggie Bush. You just feed them the ball, and then they make good things happen. And what people don't remember is that we had guys on the offensive line when Norm Chow and Pete Carroll were there, that they would individually, by themselves, take out like two linemen and a linebacker. And of course, Reggie Bush is going to get around them, and then when he gets up to speed, good night. That made the difference. We had a phenomenal offensive line, and that struggled in past years. And so I was really excited when we first got the announcement that Cliff Kingsbury was coming in to be the offensive coordinator, because I was like, now that takes the pressure off of the offensive line. They don't have to block for as long or blow open a hole if they're not capable of that. And we can spread the ball out. And that's a great way to mitigate not having that strength anymore. And then he immediately left for the Arizona Cardinals. We got Graham Harrell, and I was still optimistic, but it didn't quite pan out. So I thought it was really fascinating to see Cliff Kingsbury coming back now after his little stint in the NFL, and he's coming back to USC. What do you think that looks like? How do you think that affects us?
To be honest, I think, it's definitely going to help USC's offense. It's just another set of eyes, I think. As far as points per game and that sort of stuff, I don't know about that, but he'll be able to identify things that might be missed. It's just another expert pair of eyes there that can analyze things that I don't see, and that, yeah, I mean, because Lincoln Riley, that's his specialty too, was on offense.
Yeah.
So we've got two masterminds there going together, and I just think they'll be able to out scheme almost anyone on offense. Now I'm hoping that they'll be able to see that and help the defense as well on that. I don't know how much Cliff is going to help on the defense or not, but
yeah,
you would imagine that if he's looking at game tape of the opponents, he can identify what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it's becoming a lot more complex. People are, I mean, as the game has progressed, more and more money has come in, more and more pressure to get good. The skill of players in general has increased. I mean, that's you've got to have that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, and going back to your offensive line thing, I mean, the offensive line play on the entire West Coast here is not up to par with the South. The South definitely has better offensive linemen just up and down as compared to the West Coast. So you do have to compensate and hopefully grab some of those guys from the South and bring them in. But we look at where like Clay Helton was leaving our program recruiting wise. Like when he was doing all right, it was strictly based on talent. Yeah. And as soon as I mean, a lot of this is the COVID year / things just deteriorated there, and we didn't have the talent. We didn't have those recruiting classes in, and we look at the defense for 2 years now. They haven't had anyone that was all that great. I mean, there's a couple guys that, but not a defense that was full of what USC used to have. Right. And so I'm thinking, bringing in more talent, that's got to help.
Okay, from the chat, Troy Tyler says, I want to know your thoughts about killing the Pac-12. So that's an excellent question. I was like, there's no way that's real. When I first started hearing rumors that USC was going to the Big Ten, USC and UCLA were going to the Big Ten, I was like, there's no way that's real. We would never. They're on the other side of the country. That doesn't make any sense. And then later that day, oh yeah, it's real. I was shocked. I was blown away. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, as far as the question of like what's happening with the Pac-12, I don't see it staying together, unfortunately. I think things are leaning towards 2 super conferences. And like one will be run by Fox, one will be run by ESPN. The SEC is sort of the ESPN one, the Big Ten is sort of the Fox one, where those rights are going to. I mean, the Pac-12 just trying to get this media deal. They keep on saying, we've got something lined up, it's coming up, and then another month goes by and there's still nothing. The Big 12 beat them to it, and that's who they're competing against, because if the Pac-12 doesn't have a good enough deal, then Utah, Colorado, Arizona State probably will go to the Big 12.
Yep.
And so they're teetering right there, but you have to cater as well to Washington and Oregon, who are now the big programs in the Pac-12, and they've got to get a bigger share to Oregon and Washington, or to be honest, I think both of those would be better going independent until they can get absorbed by either the SEC or the Big Ten.
One of the two, the NFC or the AFC.
Yeah. I mean, even though it doesn't make sense, because USC going to Rutgers is ridiculous on just the distance, especially if you're talking about like a women's lacrosse game or something like that.
Oh, right.
But having said that, there's just so much more money. It's
Yeah.
and the Pac-12 right now, I just don't see how they can compete or get a deal. They've been trying with Amazon, they've been trying with streaming, and nothing seems to be sticking. And I think part of it is because there's so many teams that are ready to bolt. It's hard to tie anyone down.
100%. All right, another question from the chat. As an SC fan, do you think that Utah deserves more credit for making the Pac-12 Rose Bowl? Sure. I'll give them credit. They played really well. And yeah, they deserve credit for getting to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. I don't know how much credit are we giving them? I mean, they're Pac-12 champs. That's the credit they should get.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to say that they're an ultimate team. They're not on par with what Oregon was doing when Oregon was winning the Pac-12 every year. They're not on par with what USC was doing under Pete Carroll, but they are Pac-12 champs and back to back. So yeah, that's what they are. I wouldn't say that they're an elite team, but they're a very, very good team. Yeah.
And no doubt well coached. I think it wasn't just like taking over after Urban Meyer. Kyle Whittingham has done a good job with this program. And
and he's built it. Yeah, like when they joined the Pac-12, you saw what the difference was between the Mountain West and the Pac-12, and it took years to get that talent and skill in there. Now he's got them set. They're a power in the Pac-12. That's just, unfortunately, to my disappointment, the Pac-12 has not been the power in the country, not anywhere close, ever since really USC went down.
Yeah, that's true. It hasn't quite bounced back. Okay, a couple more sports topics, and then we'll move on. Clock running on first downs. This is an upcoming rule change. Is that right?
Yeah. So they're trying to speed up games in college football. So they're changing it to be like the NFL now. So there won't be a clock stoppage until they set the ball after first downs anymore throughout the entire game. The clock will continue to run. So on 2-minute drives, you're really going to have to work the sidelines as opposed to just focus on getting first downs, and then you can, run up to the line and the clock isn't going. So I like I like clock stopping. It gives a comeback more there's a lot more ability for a comeback to happen. So it's not my favorite thing, but I can see why they're doing it. But
Yeah, agree. There are some classic games, and it's gone like both directions, but where they were able to get the first down, and that buys them enough time they can regroup and then keep their drive going. The drama that encourages in college football is something that I think we'll miss. But
and I do think, I do agree with like NLI or whatever it is. The
name, image, likeness.
Yeah,
NIL.
name, image, likeness, all of that. It's becoming much more like the NFL, and transfer portal, all of that, much more like the NFL. But I think if you can still separate it, because in my opinion, the NFL, obviously the players are better. You've got better football per se, as in they're professionals there. But college football has always been more exciting, with more traditions, more, and so more entertaining, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I just hope they don't lose that when they're trying to become more and more like the NFL.
Yeah, agree. All right. Okay, another sports topic, tanking in sports. So this is like where you hope your team loses to get better draft choices in the next season. Is that the idea?
Yeah, this is okay. So of the Jensens here, I am a huge Anaheim Duck hockey fan. So like they come right after USC for me. And I know not almost no one else really cares about hockey, but I care a lot about hockey. But it pained me for over half the season, which goes on for a long time. I was rooting every single game for the Anaheim Ducks to lose. It was just awful. It's an awful thing. To the end of the season, where you're going against your worst rival, the LA Kings, and we were just, all Anaheim Duck fans were going, we've got to lose this game. If we lose this game, we get last place, the best odds for the draft. And I just think that's an awful. I can't imagine, like, as a USC fan going, oh, I hope UCLA beats us.
Yeah.
That would never happen. Never happen. And yet, in professional sports, here I was rooting for that same thing. And then they only ended up getting the second pick in the draft anyways. So they didn't even get the first one, even though they got the best odds for it. But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to it. I don't know if you just say, the best solution is what they do in European soccer with relegation. But that's never going to happen in North American sports.
Yeah.
But you can't kick teams down into lower leagues, unfortunately.
That would make the whole thing that would make it more interesting. There's a good case for that.
It mean, like, those last place teams, like in the Premier League and whatnot, I mean, their games mean as much as the top teams that are trying to win the championship. And it's like jobs on the line. So it is very entertaining. But I don't know if you could just do, like, everyone that's, in this bottom thing has an equal chance. So it doesn't matter if you're losing or winning games. But then I know that's hard because you're trying to get the garbage teams like the Anaheim Ducks were this year to be better. And so I don't know if there's a solution. I don't know if you have any ideas or.
Yeah, that's a tough situation with professional. I mean, certainly in the NFL, I've seen many games where the fans just put the bags over their heads and they're ashamed to be a fan, but they hope for, or like New Orleans back when Reggie Bush was going to be drafted. Lose a game, win a Bush type thing, and
yeah. Or like this year, I mean, they had Houston going into the last game. All they had to do was lose it. And they ended up winning their last game, and that knocked them out of the first pick, and they couldn't pick Bryce Young. So, I mean, it's you ended up winning a game, and it cost you greatly.
Yeah,
I hate that.
Agreed. Okay, let's see. We've got from the chat, Marcus says NHL draft was rigged, and also Blackhawks deserve to lose every game 0-82.
No argument. I will say with the rigged thing, I mean, I don't know if it's rigged or not. I don't know why they would rig it for Chicago after they've got, covered up sexual abuse and whatnot, and they've been a mess. But to all they would have to do to fix all the rumors, I mean, and it's rampant rumors that they fix it in the NHL, is just show when they're drawing the ping pong balls instead of just putting the thing. But they never show us that, and so it leads to,
the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that it's rigged. And yeah, I feel awful that Chicago is getting Connor Bedard. It would have been nice if he was an Anaheim Duck.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. We also wanted to talk about some food. We need to have a food subject on every one of the Jensen programs. And today we're going to talk a little about burgers. Truly one of the great foods of human achievement. When you think about all of the cooperation that needs to take place for the cattle to be raised, for the pigs to be slaughtered for their bacon, for the the tomatoes to be raised for the sauce and for the fresh tomatoes, and the lettuce and the wheat to be grown for the buns. And there's so much cooperation. The ultimate in human achievement really is the double bacon cheeseburger. There's nothing quite like it. I absolutely adore the double bacon cheeseburger. However, In-N-Out Burger is, they don't have bacon on their burgers, but they are a premium burger.
If we're going fast food burgers, being from Southern California, growing up with In-N-Out, it brings that nostalgia, and it's got to be the top of the list. For one, it's delicious, and two, it still costs less than most other burgers.
Yes, and it's and they haven't like abbreviated the size. Like even because I see a lot of people say, "Oh, Five Guys is so much better." And I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy getting the extra toppings that Five Guys offers on a burger. That's delicious, but it's different than what In-N-Out has. And the other thing that I've noticed is that the Five Guys burgers aren't getting any bigger. The amount of fries that I used to get when I first went there, it was a huge cup full, and they poured it in the bag, and now it's like maybe the cup is a little bit full. One of them spilled out into the bag. It's not like it was.
And it's $5 more.
And it's $5 more. Yeah, every year. They haven't given you more food, but they've found a way to increase the price. A little bit disappointing.
Yeah. What's your opinion on, I know the other one, the other Southern burger is Whataburger. If you had that, what is your opinion of Whataburger in comparison?
So yeah, when I was moving out to Florida, we stopped in Texas at a Whataburger. I wanted to try this burger that all the Texans were telling me was superior to In-N-Out. What I found was that when we went in there, the staff was friendly, but there wasn't a line of people that were just fanatics over it. Like every In-N-Out location ever, they're always busy. There's a reason for that. The burger was good. I'll say it was a good burger. I don't think it was as good as In-N-Out. I will say I was impressed that it was a wide burger. That is something like when you've got like a tall burger that you can't wrap your mouth around and it just kind of all falls apart. That's kind of annoying. And the Whataburger burger was a wider burger, and so it was easier to eat, and it was a good burger.
I agree. To me, the Whataburger comes in second because I really enjoyed it. Not quite In-N-Out level, but it's better than any of the others I've had. The other one that I wasn't impressed with that has a big following was Shake Shack. Yeah. And I had one of those when I was in DC, and it did not impress me. I didn't think it was anything better than like a Wendy's hamburger or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Agree. A little bit bland on the beef. It was okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a burger, so it's hard to not. I'll eat it almost anything. I mean, I'll go to the McDonald's and eat a burger, realizing that the hamburger meat is probably not meat.
Pink slime.
Yeah, but I'll still eat it. As the kids want the Happy Meal toy.
McDonald's was. Because I remember when I was a little kid, and when the toy was more important than the food, I enjoyed McDonald's. But when I got a little bit older, they did have a thing where you could get on Wednesdays, I think it was, a 25-cent hamburger. And so there was that. You could just get quantity. I could spend $2 and get 8 of these things that weren't very big, but you had 8 of them. And so there was that. But like, as time has gone on, I haven't seen those prices ever again. But I have seen that portion size just in their Big Mac. You know, for what? I get an extra bun?
Yeah,
I don't want the bun. I wanted meat and cheese. Why the bun? Yeah. Okay, from the chat, do you like Burger King?
It's Burger King is the worst of all of the fast food restaurants. They put just mayo, which is disgusting, on all of their burgers. But even if you were to say, okay, I like mayo because I'm a psycho, you know, like someone might be here, and or you know, you just get rid of it, or you like it. The burger itself, because it's flame broiled, is dry. Every single one of them is dry and nasty. It's worse than the fake meat at McDonald's.
So, I guess it's maybe the mayo. I enjoy Burger King. I enjoy Burger King way more than McDonald's. Maybe it's a combination of the sauce and the lettuce and the tomato that I get on it, and I mean, it's okay. It's certainly not something like, if I've got a choice between many different options, Wendy's ranks higher than Burger King, no doubt.
Oh, of all of this, the basic ones of McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Wendy's is the top one of those lower end fast food restaurants, I would say.
Yeah.
And then you go into the regional chains that oftentimes, I take that back. I don't know if you consider this a regional one or not. I do enjoy Carl's Jr. Like, I would have Carl's Jr. over Wendy's.
Yeah.
Or Hardee's. I don't know if they do. I've never been to a Hardee's before. I know they're the same thing, but
having moved out to the east, they are all Hardee's out here, and sometimes I've found that means it's not quite what Carl's Jr. was. But the one that we go to that's not too far from us here in Central Florida, it's very much like Carl's Jr. was, and it's terrific. It's great. We enjoy that.
As a Pacific Northwest person here in the Seattle area, I have to just throw in another regional burger chain that I know no one else has probably had unless you live up here. It's Dick's Burgers. And the people up here seem to like them. They're really cheap. Like, they're still like $1, but they're not worth that. They are gross. And so if you come to the Seattle area and see big lines for Dick's, just pass on by. They're gross.
Is that anything Is that anything like the Crystal Burger, the really greasy low end?
I imagine it is. It's definitely the high school hangout place. You know, go get a bag full of Dick's Burgers like you would, but it's so bad.
Oh, that's fantastic. White Castle. White Castle, from the chat. That's the other one that's similar to Crystal Burger.
Which I have never had White Castle, but it's the same idea. Yeah, I'm missing that area of the country. I've not been there.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Yeah, it's good to talk about food. This is great. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about entertainment. So one of the things that has been kind of a big deal is both in sci-fi, we had the series The Mandalorian for Star Wars, and some other stuff that's been announced for Star Wars. And then recently, Star Trek Picard finished its series in the 3rd season. And it was kind of interesting. When Picard started, I don't know if you've seen any of Picard.
I've seen some of it, not all of the latest season.
So the first couple of seasons came out, and there were a lot of people that were like not super thrilled about it. There were some things that were good, but there were some complaints that they kind of steered away from what Star Trek had been, and a lot of people were sour on that a little bit. And compared to those early seasons of Mandalorian, that everybody was just Baby Yoda. It was an obsession. It went everywhere. People loved it. And I feel like with this last season, those positions have switched, where there's been a lot of criticism about the latest season of Mandalorian, and everybody has fallen in love with season 3 of Star Trek Picard. And so if you haven't seen all of Star Trek Picard, we won't do any kind of spoiler discussion, but yeah, what are your thoughts on Mandalorian?
Okay, so starting with Mandalorian, it's been great the first 2 seasons. Just top of the line Star Wars action. And I was okay with this season. I thought it was entertaining. The problem I think that a lot of people had is that they've put so much into it that you needed to watch all of the Clone Wars and all of Star Wars Rebels to understand some of the stuff that was going on. Also, the first 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett should have actually been in this season. Right. Of The Mandalorian, and so I'm sure that threw off people. If you have all of that, I think it was very entertaining. I was still good for The Mandalorian. I mean, it's Star Wars to me has always been more of the space western adventure,
right?
A Firefly or whatnot is like that as well. And Mandalorian has done a good job of that, I think. There wasn't as much interaction between the Mandalorian and Grogu, which was the problem in this season. And then, adding the one episode where they were focusing on the scientist guy, the cloner, I could have done without it. They were trying to make it like Andor, but
it felt out of place.
Yeah, we didn't need that. You could have had that entire episode be deleted, basically, and been just fine. Just knowing, this person that we saw briefly in the first season or second season, they're still alive and they're a bad guy. That's all we needed.
Yeah, they certainly could have conveyed that a little bit differently, and I couldn't help but think a lot of people have kind of inferred that what they were trying to do was take the actress who played the Imperial spy that was working for Gideon as like the strong female character that they needed to put in and emphasize, because they had fired Gina Carano, who had been Cara Dune. Maybe. It certainly felt like there were a couple of things throughout the season that they felt like they needed to make some political statements. And
you mean Lizzo?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with that. If you can just suspend your disbelief on that, though, I will agree. I was very entertained. I enjoyed it. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, and I think I mean this season of Mandalorian could have been like the book of Bo-Katan. Right. It was really all about her, and which, I could understand if you'd only seen Mandalorian, you'd be like, why do I care? But having watched Clone Wars and Rebels, then you're like, well, I do care about Bo-Katan. She's pretty cool.
Yes. There's a lot of things that ties together. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And then going over to the Star Trek side of things, again, I haven't seen the latest season, but the previous ones and even some of the other Star Trek programming, like my problem that I've had with it is they've sort of gone away from and tried to make it Star Wars almost like Star Trek all from the beginning was this utopian culture. You're risen above, the foils of humanity. I mean, they still have, their faults and whatnot, but as a society, you've moved on, and so you're going and you're exploring ideas and concepts, and so you can have just these episodes where you meet some giant face in this space and whatever, because it's exploring an idea. And with the new Star Trek, it's sort of like, well, we have to make sure that none of these characters are actually these good utopian characters, and we've got to tear them all down, and they've all got these awful they're just filling all these characters with way too many flaws and not exploring the ideas that Star Trek used to do in, the original series and Next Generation. That's been my feeling with it, at least. Which can be entertaining, but it's not Star Trek-like.
Yeah, they certainly made the Star Trek universe a lot darker of a place. And you're absolutely right, like Gene Roddenberry's original standard on the Next Generation when he talked about it is no conflict inside the crew. When there's conflict, it will have external sources. He didn't want like high school drama on the bridge of a ship that's meant for these big things. They should behave like adults and professionals. And you see a lot of the actors and writers complain about that and say, well, no, that's the source of drama, this conflict. That's the essence of drama. Therefore, we need all of this internal conflict. And it frequently comes off as they're just being catty to each other. They're being obnoxious. They aren't behaving like adults.
Yeah, like I think the episodes that I have watched of Picard, and I mean, we've got like these love triangle or just weird relationships, and not saying you can't have romance or anything like that, but it's all like from broken families, and it doesn't lead the way. Like this is a society that runs with order, and yes, you can have disagreements and things, but it goes through in a right way.
Yeah. I will say, like, having seen all 3 seasons of Picard, I will say, in spite of its flaws, I enjoyed the first season. I was a little less enthusiastic about the second season. They did some things that were entertaining, but the big picture was forced. There were a lot of things that felt forced.
Yeah, Q was... I don't know. I don't like what they did with it. It made no sense.
No, it was forced. And season 3, they just threw season 1 and 2 out practically and said we're going to have a Next Generation reunion. And there were a lot of things that they pulled back to that were interesting and entertaining, but they still had some moments that I think were excessively catty between some of the characters that I could have lived without. That having been said, I mean, I certainly loved Star Trek a ton growing up, and so it was high on the nostalgia.
What do you? So, question here from the chat: what do you think about Deep Space Nine?
I really was so excited for Deep Space Nine, and that's really where the cattiness started. You had these 2 different sides that were supposed to be getting along, and people that were upset at each other for reasons that didn't make sense. And That having been said, there were also some really entertaining and enjoyable things. The concept of you've got that mysterious constable who's a shapeshifter, trying to figure out where he comes from, and they discover there's this wormhole that leads to this distant area of the galaxy in the Gamma Quadrant. And then you find out as they develop everything, they're the big bad. They're the villains of this whole thing. And I thought that was an interesting idea.
I like in Deep Space Nine, the thing that I think you're right. That's when they started to introduce a lot more, catty whatnot. But the thing I do like is they had those bigger story arcs that combined, wove through even multiple seasons, and I did enjoy that. That was more than Star Trek Next Generation did a little with the Borg, and but it really, I think, came full circle with Deep Space Nine, and that was the best of weaving that continual story. Even if every episode didn't have anything to do with it, you would maybe hear something about, the Dominion is they're exploring out in the wormhole or whatnot, and then 2 seasons later, then all of a sudden this is set up with the war. So I did like that, but I think that's. I mean, we've got the peak there, and then it started going downhill with Voyager. And
Voyager is one that, like, a lot of fans say, "Oh yeah, I loved Voyager," and what they really mean is they loved 7 of 9. They wanted to see a good-looking girl on the show, and that's what they cared about. And it was interesting that didn't translate to the same popularity for the subsequent series, Enterprise, because they had a similar formula. But I actually enjoyed the Enterprise as a series. There were some things that they did that were kind of odd, but they found a rhythm. But by that time, it was too late. They had lost it. The other one is, have you seen any of the Strange New Worlds series?
I've not seen any of the Strange New World ones.
So it makes some assumptions that you have to know some things from the Star Trek Discovery series, getting into the first episode. But not a ton of assumptions. You don't necessarily have to do that. And if you do, it just adds some background. Kind of like the, Clone Wars with Bo-Katan. Very well done. I really enjoyed that series. I thought that was very well done. And it was kind of interesting because it was it went back to we're going to focus on episodes at a time. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of story that goes through, but they have kind of independent shows, and it was very well done.
What and going back, I mean, whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, or whatnot, the most important thing that you can do to make it good episodes is to actually worry about the story or ideas that you're bringing, and hopefully avoid the other things that so much in the media want it to be now. Yeah. Like if you just focus on the story, then whatever happens is good. If it's a good story, if you're trying to write something into it, it's always bad.
That was the same issue that we experienced. It's not just Star Trek, obviously. It's all over the place. It's in Rings of Power when they're like, "Oh, the elves are after my job." Like, really? These are the men of Numenor? I don't think so.
Yeah. That was...
yeah.
I will watch season 2 of Rings of Power, but
yeah,
it's something that I would do with the Star Wars. I know they're not doing this, but I would have just sort of retconned 7, 8, and 9 of Star Wars movies, just pretend like they didn't happen, and do whatever. I would do the same thing with Rings of Power. Just pretend like that first season didn't even happen, and then start new.
Yeah. Absolutely entertaining. That's fantastic. So, let's see. Let's check the chat one more time, real quick, before we wrap up. Next Generation was better, I think. Had a hard time getting into Deep Space Nine. That's fair. Next Generation was peak. I enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
And I
Banger
think
of a theme song.
DS9 you had to get into it first.
You did.
Yeah, and then once you were in, unfortunately, like 2 seasons, then you were ready to keep on going.
Yeah. And then Troy says Marvel versus DC, prefer Wizards and Magic. I like Wizards and Magic too. We enjoy fantasy. We will probably have some future discussions on that sort of stuff in future programs. So yeah, great interests. We'll be talking about all sorts of stuff that's interesting in future programs. Anything else you wanted to get off your chest before we wrap up? We've hit our hour.
I'm good. I think this was fun.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody hanging out with us, and join us next time. We'll let you know on social media, and you can subscribe to the channel to get notifications for when the next stream will be scheduled. It'll be. We've been kind of debating, is it a month, is it 2 weeks? It'll be something in that vicinity, but we're still working out those details. Definitely subscribe, stay tuned. You can follow us on social media, either Facebook or Twitter, and we'll see you in the next program.
Right on.